So relational anxiety. The first one is cognitive dissonance. Big word, basically confusion. There's two that we're going to talk about underneath this one, but this is when somebody's words and actions, they don't match. Have you ever thought about, like, how did we get here? Like, you said all of this. So a very recent example, as of this morning, we were talking to a leader, and what they experienced was about 2 weeks ago, the person in the group was saying, this is the best group I've ever had. This is amazing. I tell everybody how community has impacted my life so much. 2 weeks later, they're leaving the group, and they're going to another church, and it's the leader's fault. Or at least that's what they're saying. It's like, whoa. What just happened? And we probably all experienced that to some degree. We're like, I don't get what's happening right now. And it's confusing, and it puts you in a state of looking at yourself, and you're like, gosh, what did I say? Did that? I guess maybe I did say that, and then you have no idea what's happening. And it's hard because you're dealing with now another person who also has maybe some of those anxieties, some of those fears, some of those things, and you're having to now walk through that. And so normally, cognitive dissonance happens in the moment, and you don't even really realize it's happening. And that's what's so difficult about it. It's when two pieces of information don't match. You say this, but I see this in your life, or at least how you're responding to me. So there's two different ones that we're going to talk about within cognitive dissonance, and it's mixed messages. I'll just throw the next one on there just so that you see it, and double binds. So mixed messages and double binds. Mixed messages. You can probably figure this one out by yourself, but I'll read it here for you. These are two conflicting messages arriving at the same time from someone. So two categories of this could be passive aggressiveness, and another category could be sarcasm. These can form cognitive dissonance because you cannot process the opposite signals as you're receiving them, and you can't settle them in your brain. You can't make sense of what's happening. And so sometimes sarcasm can just be, hey, we're just ribbing each other. And sometimes sarcasm can be, oh, there's a big kernel of truth there, and you just said that in front of everybody about my leadership or about this person or whatever it may be, and you're like, I was going to say something wrong. Shoot, what do I say or what do I do? You know, and how do you address that? Yeah, bro, yeah. I wasn't going to say the other thing that you're probably thinking, but still. Anyway, let's move on. Here's an example of mixed messages that to unpack it a little bit. You're in group, and somebody has a really, really strong personality, and they have a really, really strong, passionate statement about what the group should do, and they're really, really strong about it, and they want you to do something about it. And in actuality, what you're receiving from them is that they're just a strong personality, and you're receiving a strong, passionate tone from them because that's just kind of who they are, but they don't actually have the backing of, oh, I really believe in this idea. So I totally get caught in this all the time on our team meeting. I'm a very passionate person, and sometimes I don't actually believe in total what I'm trying to communicate or what we should do. What, Kristen? Kristen, would you like to say something? Yeah. It's great. And many times they're saying, and you need to act on this as the leader. And so it can be confusing, and what do you do in that moment? Are you going to be pigeonholed into doing something because, well, I guess this person's really passionate about it, and so we just need to go do it? And then generally, after 2 to 3 years of that, what happens? You burn out and you stop leading the group because somebody pressed you so hard, and you allowed them to kind of put that anxiety upon you. And so the best way to do this is, hey, you seem really passionate about it. I would love for you to take this on for us. And two things are going to happen there. It's either going to die right there, or it's going to be awesome, and they're going to take it, and now they have ownership in the group that they never had before. And you are delegating the leadership opportunities that has for you and for them. So that's the best way to do it. The next one is the double bind. I already threw it up there. This is another type of cognitive dissonance. This is when you find yourself in a situation where no matter what you choose, you lose. So you've heard the phrase, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Here's an example of a relational double bind. I need you to provide a simple, immediate solution to this long-term, complex problem that nobody else can help but you. Who has experienced that type of situation? It's really, really challenging. I'll give you an example of one. I was standing right back there, and it was 2 group connects ago. this lady who was a part of a group, and she was trying to get into another group, but it was kind of confusing at the time what was actually happening or what she actually wanted. But she walked up to me and she said, and she, through communicating to me, gave me the feeling, hey, this is my last hope here for community, and if you don't find the perfect fit for me, I'm leaving the church. That's kind of what I was experiencing. And through my conversation with her, realizing, I can see maybe why you're difficult within community. And so in that moment, if I did not recognize where she was putting the monkey, she was putting the monkey on my back, right? And that if I don't fix the problem for her, she's leaving the church. So just that really stinks to be put in that type of situation. And in actuality, I needed to recognize that I actually can't win. Because if I put her into a healthy group, even if it's a healthy group, she's not healthy. And she's going to hurt the group, she's going to hurt the leadership, all those things. But then if I don't put her in a group, she's going to leave the church, and I don't want that to happen. And so it became very quickly the idea that if I did not recognize the anxiety in the moment, I'm the one that's suffering, not her. And it was going to affect my leadership and how I was leading out. And so that's a double bind, and I'm sure you've experienced that before. The best way to get out of a double bind, face it. I mean, when we try to run away from it, when we try to walk on eggshells, again, you are the one that struggles there, nobody else. And when you're dealing with that, you are starting to feel exhausted, you're starting to feel that burnout, then you're the one that suffers. And probably your spouse and your family and the whole group, right? And so by recognizing that and addressing it and facing it, you're actually allowing yourself to be healthy and your whole group. Yeah, so good question. We're not going to do resolutions here. Yeah. Help? No. So she went back to her old group, which they were kind of they were splitting, but they all wanted to stay together, and some went to Plano, and it was kind of during that time. And so she did end up going back to her old group, which she was there for 6 years. So it's not like it was a short amount of time. They knew all of what she brought with her. And so in that sense, it kind of ended up being better. But those are tough situations. So to go back to what Kristen was talking about, where, there's nobody else to ask. There's in this abusive situation or this really difficult thing, you're the one. And so how do you handle that in the moment is just really difficult. And I'm sure for many of you, as you think about work or different positions that you hold, it's hard to fire people. It's hard to have those conversations. It's hard to, all those things. And so to deal with the anxiety instead of just continuing in the pattern is really important. Okay. Next one, paradox, which I'm sure you know as well. So this is similar to a double bind, but this is an impossible situation that you're trying to do something in, and it's impossible to do. So again, no-win situation. An example of this is, hey, you need to be more spontaneous. You're like, well, you just told me to be more spontaneous, so how do I plan to be spontaneous? I can't do that. And so it's a paradox. And so maybe in a situation, the way that I've experienced this is, hey, I just need you to tell me exactly what to do or what the Bible says about this. And once I do, they don't like it. And they get angry at me because I told them what the Bible says. And so again, I'm putting this in an impossible situation where it's a no-win situation. Maybe some of you experienced that. Next one, phantom strikes. This one's always so fun. Is anytime one person takes a shot at you, but they carry and this is important, hidden army with them. This is a variation of me and a bunch of people who aren't here and who I won't name all think there's something wrong with you. Phantom strikes hurt because they take direct hits, but the weapon has more firepower than you first realized. Because what you thought was a single bullet turns out to be a shotgun of all sorts of kinds of pellets. Now, this is usually wielded by people who have really strong personalities or, candidly, who lack the emotional maturity to actually address the things that they're trying to address directly. Sometimes what happens is that they share with, let's just say it's in your group, and they share with the group, and everyone just kind of nods and not really sure what you're saying right now, and what they interpret that as is everyone agrees with me and everyone feels the exact same degree and level of frustration that I feel as well. So I'm going to go tell this guy. And a whole army comes with them that aren't really there. So the best way to deal with this is, man, just ask specific questions. The who, what, when, where, how. Ask for examples. Maybe there is something that you need to deal with. Maybe there is some truth to what they're saying. But in actuality, lots of times, it becomes larger in their mind than what the actual issue is. And to walk through that and to think about that is really important. The next two, I think, are the most important. Next one is leadership landmines. Leadership landmines, they do great damage. So if you're leading a group and you have no idea that a highly emotional topic comes up, and it's clear from the group that something just shifted, and how you walk forward in that is really important. So an example that I've heard from, it was when I was at the Dallas campus, is a group they were talking about, a lot of times this is around divorce or politics or just hot button issues and topics, and the topic of abortion came up. And within the group, as they were discussing it, they had no idea that there were two women there who had had abortions. So they were talking about abortion in some ethereal sense, but for these two women, this was very real. So their body language changed. They began to think, gosh, can I trust these people? Can I trust this leader? Is this something where I can really be open and honest? And really the best way to deal with the landmines is just to face it. You see that something has happened here. Now, the discernment comes in play. Do you address it all as a group, or do you address it off to the side and then come back to the group? But leadership landmines are difficult. We were just talking in the back, and again, this morning, sometimes you don't know that you landed on a leadership landmine. It's an invisible landmine. And you see it 4 weeks later, you're like, oh my gosh, something happened and I had no idea. And so what do you do about that? As the leader, you've got to turn and face it. And if you're not willing to face it, you're not willing to continue to lead the group back to health. So this one's really, really important. The next one, power and responsibility. Leading change at last. Okay. Power and responsibility. You are serving in a role where your responsibility doesn't match the power given to you. So you're constantly in an anxious state, but you cannot put your finger on the source. It may be because you're responsible for a significant aspect of leadership, but you don't feel you've given the authority to manage your responsibility. So I will give a group leader example, and I will give a life example. Life example is a woman marries a decent man who talks to his mother every week. No matter what the wife wants, the mother gets what she wants, because the husband is still underneath the power of the wife. Sorry, the mother. You guys are listening. This is great. That was just a just teaching thing. Yeah, that's right. And so the mother actually has no responsibility, but what does she have? All the power, right? So that's a life example. In group, I think all of you guys actually have the responsibility of something that you don't have the authority for. And that's really difficult. I mean, what we tell you, what the church tells you, I would say what the scriptures tell you, it's your job to change people. It's your job to grow them in the Lord. It's your job to disciple them. It's your job, so that's your responsibility. But do you have authority to do that? No. And many times, I see it over and over again where leaders feel this responsibility, but they can't actually do anything about it. Now, you can create opportunities for those things to happen. You can pray and ask the Lord that those things would happen, but for many of us, we don't have the authority, or for all of us, we don't have the authority to actually change these things, and yet we're given the responsibility to do it, and that's a hard place to be. If you don't recognize that, that can create all sorts of internal anxiety and relational anxiety that need to be addressed. All right, last one. And we'll give you some time to think through these as well. Triangulation. This is any three-person relationship that should only have two in it. So examples, gossip, venting about another person instead of communicating with that person first are some examples. Triangles can be especially deadly in leadership because they add unnecessary drama and anxiety into relationships. People who struggle with direct communication generally will draw somebody else in so that they feel safer to have those conversations. But what happens is that it's really easy for gossip or different things to come into play. And so the best thing, if you are pulled into that relationship, and candidly, as group leaders, you're probably going to be pulled into that more than most because you're the leader and they're going to go to you. The best way to handle that is just to say, and again, this is discernment, but if somebody tells you something about another person, just clearing the air and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to inform the other person about what you just informed me about. And we're going to go Matthew 18, and we're going to do what we think is best based on the scriptures. And so that everybody has the same playing field and everyone's on the same page, so that it's not you and me talking about, Judy, but that's all of us coming together to be able to have these conversations. The last thing I'll say here is, and I think the theme for internal and specifically relational anxiety is this, and this is something that I feel like I learned about a year and a half ago. You learn to have the hard conversation so that you don't have to have a costly conversation later. I'm going to say that again. You learn to have a hard conversation now so that you don't have to have a costly conversation later. And that will save all sorts of anxiety if you're willing to actually step in and face it. It'll lead to health, it'll lead to good communication, and it'll lead to the one another's of ministry that we all love to do. But these get in the way of the one another ministry that we all love to do. So I'm going to I'll do the same thing that Jared did. Here's the questions. Discuss them. What stuck out to you? So which one stuck out to you most personally? How have you experienced any of these sources of that have negatively impacted your life, leadership, or relationships? I'll go back and I'll put these on. Just as a reminder, we'll be sending all of these definitions to you guys so that you have them in your email either tonight or tomorrow.